afternoon, everybody. I know that we're a cozy group, but I'm so happy to be here talking with you all today. Because we are small, and if it's okay with Gabrielle, I'm okay if you want to raise your hand or unmute yourself and ask a question. If anything pops up for you as we're going along the way, because I think we'll have the time and the settings okay. Would that be okay with you, Gabrielle, or would you prefer that people insert their questions into the chat?
Absolutely. I have no problem whatsoever. If they want to unmute their mics and ask the question, completely fine with that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, so we're going to talk today about so you received a negative review. Now what? Right? And up this presentation, this workshop was actually designed to talk about the ways that we can respond to public negative reviews, like Yelp, Facebook Marketplace, Google reviews, because that audience and that process can seem so overwhelming. And I'm sure we've all, when we're checking out a review, have seen an owner that maybe didn't respond in the best way, right? But some of these tips will actually also be really helpful to think about how we receive negative reviews in life, maybe how we receive negative reviews from work, maybe even friendships or other places where people have a certain expectation of us, and then they communicate to us that we didn't meet it and they're unhappy about that, right? So I think that you'll find that some of the points apply to different areas of your life. But if we're before we move on, I want to begin with this quote. Vulnerability is not winning or losing. It's having the courage to show up and be seen when we have no control over the outcome. Vulnerability is not weakness, it's our greatest measure of courage. And I would state that business owners, entrepreneurs, people that follow their passion are being incredibly courageous in being so vulnerable to put out, on a dream, on hope, something into the world, and they have no idea how it's going to be received. And the same is true for choosing to respond to negative reviews, right, online. So let's remember that we're being courageous, and that deserves to be celebrated inside of us. So, some points that we're going to cover today is understanding reviews, because there are different types of reviews, and it's good to have that understanding. It'll help us feel more empowered when we respond. We're going to talk about the gift of the negative review, because it is a treasure trove. A good negative review, and there is such a thing, is a wealth of information for a business owner. We're going to help prepare you for success. We're going to talk about some mindfulness exercises that we can do before responding to a negative review. And we're going to talk about a strategy for response. Are we going to respond to everything? Are we not going to respond at all? Both are perfectly valid. We're going to take a look at some responses and maybe write some. And then we're going to talk about the ways that perhaps the fear of receiving a negative review is holding you back from performing out loud a little bit more, or offering more services or products, because you're not sure of how they'll be received. So, what is a bad review? Does anybody feel comfortable sharing what they think a bad review is, or how you know you're reading a bad review? Um, what you think about them? One that stood out to you? So, what I would say is that a bad review is and is not a couple of different things. Yeah.
Adela, it looked like I believe Amanda was unmuting to maybe
Oh,
answer that question, I believe.
yeah. Sorry, Amanda.
So sorry, I did it all late. I would think of a bad review is something. I would think if someone wrote a bad review, it's probably something they didn't get help with, or didn't feel comfortable with the answer they got, or miscommunication.
I think that's right. So they weren't treated the way that they were expecting to, right? And then I like that you brought up miscommunication, because oftentimes it does come from just not being able to communicate, not being understood. Um, so a negative review is also not that there's I'm sorry, a negative review is also not just a gripe or an ugly comment, for example, right? If somebody says this place sucks and they don't say anything else, that's not really a bad review, right? If somebody doesn't like your service, something that is plainly what you offer, for example, everything here is vegan, at a vegan restaurant, right? That's also not a negative review. Or just unclear and confusing. They're all out of umbrellas in the middle of the summer, right? For example. Now, they're not positive, right? And they do have that negativity in there, but they're not bad reviews in the sense of they are not providing information to the average reader that's going to make them want to turn away from your restaurant. I think most of us, if we came across a review like that, wouldn't give it much attention at all, right? So that's a type of review we don't really have to worry too much about. Also, a bad review is not a simple, understandable, and correctable human error. So, for example, if somebody got the wrong topping or the color or the scheduling mix up, like Amanda mentioned, there was a mistake, but there was something done that could have corrected that mistake, and everything that could have been done was done, even if the customer is still unhappy. So when a simple mistake happens or a human error occurs, and at that moment somebody does what they need to do to fix it, if the customer is still unhappy about it and shares that review online, it's also not a bad review, according to market studies of how reviews are treated or received. So then, what is a bad review? A bad review is thought to be something that describes a specific experience where there was a reasonable expectation, there was a missed opportunity to correct a mistake, and at the end of the completed transaction, there is a feeling of frustration, which is also what Amanda shared, right? Where the customer left feeling uncomfortable and unhappy based on how they were treated when this mistake happened. They were so upset that the customer even took the time to write a review. So this is the meaningful, full of gold, bad review we actually want to spend time with, pay attention to, and focus on. Because a lot of times customers write a review because they feel that there's no other way to communicate to a business that they care about that this happened to them, and they think it shouldn't have, not only because they want to the harm to be corrected for them, but because they want more for the business. That's oftentimes care is why people bother to leave a negative review in the first place. So what's the difference between these type of reviews, right? A correctable human error where everything was done, the customer's unhappy, and a bad review where maybe everything wasn't done and the customer's still unhappy, right? The difference is the action that was taken in while the customer was in the store, right? And I don't want this to be where I'm saying, oh, the best way to deal with a bad review is to avoid getting them in the first place, because how frustrating is that? We obviously can't do that. But I bring it up to highlight what market studies of people who study negative reviews, right? So people who look at reviews before they go to a business, what studies about that audience says. And readers of these reviews are oftentimes much more generous than we expect them to be. People who are looking at reviews for businesses, especially small businesses, completely understand that these are businesses that are run by individuals. They are not run by machines, they are not run by robots, they are run by human beings who sometimes make mistakes. And they give a little bit of room for that. Believe it or not, a perfect 5-star rating across thousands or even hundreds of reviews will be as easily dismissed as a business that has hundreds of 1-star ratings, because at that point the reviews just seem fake and there is no trustworthy information to give to the client who's looking to do business with you. What the response to a negative review can show a potential customer is, if the worst possible scenario, if the worst case scenario happens to me while I am dealing with this business, how will they respond? That is actually what the customer is looking for, right? If everything goes wrong, right? We think if we go to a restaurant, if there is hair in my food, it's not what I ordered, or the food is just plain bad, how are they going to respond? If it's a service station, if I'm waiting longer than I was supposed to for my car repair, if I was misquoted, if the repair didn't hold up, how is this business going to respond to me? That is more often what readers are looking for in terms of trustworthiness and validity in the reviews. So I tell you that to hopefully remind you that people aren't expecting you to be perfect. So you're okay to show up exactly as you are, to respond to reviews from where you are today, and to continue running your business without potentially letting the fear of negative reviews, hold you back. So online reviews are exceedingly more popular every day in certain parts of society, or in certain parts of our population. Up to 99% of the public will use the internet to look up a business or to research a business before they do business with them. And right, this is because it's so easy. I mean, how many times do we take a look at Yelp before we decide to go to this Starbucks or that Starbucks, right? And among certain groups of the population, especially younger folks, young adults, between 18 and 34, an online review can now, or online reviews as a whole, are now more trustworthy than a personal recommendation. So, with this in mind, it makes sense why fear sometimes dictates the experience of receiving reviews or wanting to respond to them. Right? These feel like the stakes are really high. Facebook, Yelp, and Google are the most trusted platforms when searching for local businesses, and these are huge everyday household names at this point, right? Um, as I mentioned, consumer studies have shown that people often read the reviews to determine the trustworthiness of the business, and five-star reviews across the board can come off as fake to a public. So, what is some of the fear that we have in terms of a bad review, right? If anybody could put it in the chat or maybe share it by unmuting yourself. If you were to say what is scary about a bad review, what would you say that is? So I would say that some of the things that we worry about when we yeah.
Adela, I'm sorry. Amanda was unmuting her mic to say something.
I'm sorry,
Apologize.
Amanda. I don't know why I can't see it.
I'm so sorry. I like to mute it. It takes forever. It takes like 3 seconds to mute me.
Thank you.
You know what's my fear of someone putting a bad review? No business. I think it scares employees away, and not employees, customers, and they'll just look at, you're right, because the reviews, that's what the first thing you do anywhere you go. You look at the Google reviews to see what they're saying and if you see a lot of negative, but you're trying your best, but it's just the communication part.
Yeah.
I think that's what scares me the most is you lose business.
Mm-hmm. So there is the fear, the fear that it will directly impact your sales and prevent you from being able to be financially successful. Absolutely. And given some of these numbers, it makes sense why we would have that fear, right? I think that it can also feel a little bit insulting, especially when it's something that we care very much about. There's a fear that something that we've done our very best to comes off negatively. So I hope that some of these market studies will help alleviate some of that fear that a negative review, even a handful of negative reviews, will cause permanent, irreparable harm to the business. Because, as I mentioned, what these consumer studies show is that people are often looking at the trustworthiness and will evaluate equally as strongly how you would respond, for example, to a negative review. So it's good to have some strategies in the back pocket so that, for example, if somebody were to leave one, then we know how to leave a very strong positive, a strong response to that will alleviate some of the doubts a potential customer would have, right? Because as readers of reviews, we look at both. We take a look at what the owner responded also. So the gift of the negative review. It's true. Negative reviews are a gold mine of invaluable feedback and opportunities for increased sales. It does not, and I need to say this as often as I can. It does not have to mean the end of a business or even a decline in sales. There are a lot of successful, prosperous businesses with a lot of negative reviews, with mostly negative reviews, that either choose not to engage with them or not to get online with them. But it is possible both to change the trend of your reviews. So, for example, when businesses have negative reviews and they're not really responding or anything, and then they choose to start responding, they often begin to see increases in their ratings of half to 1 star within 6 months, just by adopting some form of a strategy. And so, what is it that negative reviews, what is it that we should embrace about negative reviews? Number one is they give us a chance to show off our exceptional customer service skills and how much we care about our clients. Like Amanda said, it is so scary to think that somebody's going to leave a negative review on our page. We could have a potential customer turn away from us because they see this negative review, right? But the other thing that somebody might see when they're examining those reviews is that the business owner doesn't just care about their public image, but they care that this person who left the review had the negative experience. And responding to them, acknowledging them gives us a chance to do just that. It gives us honest and invaluable feedback that we wouldn't get anywhere else. Unfortunately, when people are very emotional, when they're very disappointed, or even just a little bit so, they are more honest. They're not giving you the niceties as much as they would otherwise. So in this case, we're getting a true representation, or sometimes truer representation, right? Because it can go the other way. They might just say things that are untrue, but a truer representation of what we could improve on our business, what is an expectation that we hadn't thought of that is reasonable for the customer to have, even opportunities for increased sales, right? They could be saying, I would expect this business to offer A, B, C, and D. And it kind of gives you an idea of how you could fold that into your business and give an even fuller experience, right? And it gives us that credibility, that trustworthiness that only a sincere review and response can bring. It can alleviate a customer who is looking for example, for a business where they're going to have ongoing sales, right? It could be for somebody who, decorates cakes or maybe decorates homes for parties. Those are things that happen multiple times in a person's life over the course of a year. And so, what they would be looking for, let's say it doesn't have the greatest reviews, but they're seeing an upward trend in how they're treating customers. This type of response will give customers an opportunity to feel comfortable doing business with us. So, when we're going to respond, we're going to make sure that we are preparing for success. And the two ways to make that most easy on ourselves is to be authentic and to be consistent. So it's actually not required that a person be perfect or follow an exact template for how they will present themselves online. But it is very helpful to decide how it is that you're going to do that. Is it going to be you responding? Is it going to be you maybe enlisting somebody's help that helps with your business? Are you going to be talking to somebody that handles marketing or customer reviews or things like that? But don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to show off your personality, and do make sure you commit yourself in a way that lets you be consistent. So, if 1 hour to 3 hours a week is too much time, it's unrealistic for you to actually be able to sit and look at your reviews and respond to them, then maybe give yourself that time every 2 or 3 weeks, right? Your customers will, over time, begin to see that, oh, okay, this person you know, responds at a regular rate, right? At a consistent pace, even if it's not every single day or every single week, right? So keep your success simple, be authentic and consistent. If at this moment it doesn't really make sense for you to be dedicating yourself to looking at your online profile and responding to reviews, although that's always a recommendation, believe me that choosing not to engage with your online presence is a totally valid option too. And I have seen businesses do that, and I have seen businesses do really well with absolutely no online presence and or no managing of their online presence, meaning that other people build their business profile, they never respond to anything, good, bad, or indifferent. So that's a perfectly valid option too, until you're ready to actually tackle your online presence and social media. I'm sorry, and reviews. Definitely let your future clients get to know you. Don't shy away from your personality. If you are quirky, if you are, tend to be humorous and sarcastic in your responses. Just speak from a voice that's true to you, and don't be afraid that you have to create like a different voice online. Customers, again, going back to that trustworthiness, potential customers really want to see a connection between the feel that they're getting for a business online and then where they actually end up. So be yourself. So, one mindfulness tip that I have, before you decide on how you're going to respond to a negative review or how you're going to deal with one, is to practice a difficult conversation. And there are three different ways that we can do this, but they all deal with imagining it or writing it out. Right. So you take a few deep breaths, try to exhale longer than you inhale. So if you inhale for 3 seconds, exhale for 6 seconds. If you inhale for 4 seconds, exhale for 8 seconds. And I would really recommend doing this right when you get some type of review or feedback that really just burns your buns and gets your gears going. Like you're just so angry. Like, how could they say that? And you can't get your thoughts to stop. Hopefully you'll think of this little succulent blooming, and it also, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Hopefully, will remember the succulent blooming. And it also helps your eyes to, I've read recently, it helps your eyes to focus on one thing. I've always thought of that as a meditation practice, but apparently, just looking at one thing directly will stop your mind from being able to produce more thoughts. So, just a little tip for you. So take a few deep breaths, get into your body, really think about the anger that you feel in that conversation. Perhaps you feel insulted, offended, scared, worried, disappointed. Feel all those feelings, right? And now imagine that you're going to have a conversation with this customer. Imagine the two of you sitting somewhere that feels very comfortable for you, whether that's at a restaurant that you like, at your couch, somewhere in your yard or your neighborhood. So just imagine the two of you sitting across from each other, and you're floating above watching this conversation happen. And so what you do is that you imagine what each one says to each other. You imagine yourself either completely unloading on them or asking them sincerely, what happened, why are you so upset, them answering you, this was our agreement. But the whole time you are actually watching it from above, you're not participating in it. That is a good exercise that typically will that often will allow you to trigger, different resolutions and different solutions to a particular conflict that might have happened with a customer. You can use that same type of visualization, right, where you picture the two of you sitting across from each other, just really taking a moment to be comfortable. And this time you actually do imagine yourself talking to them directly, and you imagine that they're able to hear everything that you say, and then they tell you things, and even if they are difficult to hear, you notice in your own body that you're able to receive them without feeling attacked or offended. You're just able to understand what the person says, right? Or the last one, and sometimes my favorite one, is to just really like visualize, write down, voice memo, record yourself, but don't send it to anyone. Type up, but don't send. A very angry response to this person. Like, how dare you? What is wrong with you? What are you thinking? How could you say this? You're lying. This isn't true. Like, just say everything you want to say. You know, practice it as many times as you want to really sit with those feelings, like write down what they said and tear it up, because anything that you think of, right, is perfectly safe. As I think
It's incredible where you can go in your imagination. It's
so the point of that video is to remind you that all the thoughts are safe in your imagination. So think away. And the reason that I'm sticking so hard on this topic is because this is the place where it really doesn't matter what you respond. It doesn't matter in this imaginative place, whether it's on a paper, whether it's on whether it's typed up, whether it's an email you never send, it lets you get all of that energy, that anger out, and it clears your mind to be able to think about how it is that you want to respond, accepting that you are that upset or that nervous or that scared or that flat out confused will allow you to clear that energy within yourself. It will allow you to think more clearly and to be able to respond from a place of clarity, of empowerment, to the review. So once we've done that, then we're really going to evaluate the review that we're going to respond to, right? And like we mentioned, there is the review that's from the troll, the angry person that doesn't really provide any information or make much sense. There is a honest and meaningful experience from a customer who is unhappy. And then there's another one that we haven't talked about yet, but that's an unhappy customer who is also not telling the truth. So, a couple of options when you receive a short, angry review with no context, right? The kind of like this place sucks type of review. Okay, so one is to always have a standard way to respond to those people. You can respond to all of them. It does help to be consistent. So if you're going to respond to one, respond to them all. But basically, you would say, I'm so sorry that you had this experience. We would love to know why so that we can do better next time. Please reach us at this number, at this phone number. Thank you again for your feedback or for your comment. You could choose to ignore it, like I said, or you could be funny, like this owner right here, right? Just for their attitude from George Complainer, and the owner totally being themselves. Your surname, your last name speaks for itself, right? And think about it. Imagine if you were reading this review, right? Looks perfectly fine, nothing wrong with it. And you kind of like that the owner, gives it right back to them. Then there is the meaningful review, right? This is the one where we saw the opportunities for growth. What problems did the customer experience? What expectations did they have, right? That what are customers expecting of us before they even come to us, right? How did the team on site respond to them? It will help you to recall or remember, has this happened more than once? Was there a missed opportunity to correct an issue? Is there an improvement to policies or procedures that we can make? And what other information did this review give you about your business? So those are all things to take in. So one way to approach a meaningful review is similar to the way we responded to the troll, and that is to take it offline, but in a more sincere way where we are expecting the customer to get back to us. So this is a review from Portos. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with them or not, but I thought they'd be a really good example because Portos started out as a family business with, I believe, just the original parents, mother and father, running it. So about 40-ish years ago, they were just that tiny little storefront. Now they've expanded to, I believe, six or seven thriving, booming bakeries at this point here in Southern California. But they still take their customer service very, very seriously. So here you notice that this customer left a review, a 3-star review, which isn't considered very good, I think, for people on Yelp. And this person says that the food is great, but that they're starting to experience unfriendliness now or just rudeness, in particular on the beverage or food. And they assume it's because the bakeries are getting bigger and they are busier, right? So they give them a little bit like of an excuse for why. So here, the owner gives a very thoughtful and meaningful review. It was within 3 days, which is a good time to respond. They thank them for sharing the feedback. They express their apology and their disappointment. And saying, as you can imagine, this is not the experience we have in mind for our guests. And what's really good about throwing in that sentence is that the business is acknowledging that the customer has a reasonable expectation to expect good customer service. And then they're inviting the person who wrote the review to please connect with them so that they can talk about it some more. So email your username, your phone number to this email so that we can reach out. Right. So that is one way to deal with this type of review. And then there's also the option to respond directly to it. in that actual email, right? So, in this type of response, you would address the customer again by name, thank them for their review, very similar to the first one, except that you would summarize their points a little bit more. So, for example, you would go more into detail into what it is that they experienced, that they discussed. So if this person was talking about it's normal to expect bad customer service in food and beverage, the business owner might say that's actually not true. That's never the expectation we want for you to have. Nonetheless, it happened. So you apologize and take responsibility for the negative experience that they had. And this is where the earlier mindfulness tips really help, because they prevent us from responding from a place where we're still feeling defensive and angry about it, right? Because the person is a customer of ours, they did have an expectation, we didn't meet it. We can simply, especially keeping in mind that this is in a public forum, we can simply, take accountability for that and apologize that that is what happened when they came. Commit to improving. So if there is specific actions that the company has taken, especially if it was a serious issue, if it's, we've taken this concern seriously and we're now going to be doing this differently, or we're coaching this person, make sure to state that and invite them back. It's good to invite them back and offer to, buy them a cup of coffee when they come back. You don't have to do that, but just express sincerity in your desire to see them back, to have a more positive experience the next time. And now a different case, the review is not true. So sometimes people just lie, right? Not totally sure why. Sometimes people just lie when they're writing a review, and you should feel empowered. Go ahead and respond to them, call them out for lying. Here's a couple of ways that some folks did that. So here is a review where the person, it just sounds terrible. Don't go. The mussels are terrible. Scallops, hard and overcooked. The linguine was inedible. Everything. I mean, it just sounds gross. I don't think, I would be too hungry after reading this review and then hearing about the wait time. It has a lot of detail. And then it's talking about how it used to be a different business years ago, and that now that it's changed, even kind of discredits Yelp here. Um, so the person's very upset, and it's just saying that their experience was horrible. And then here you'll notice that it's been voted useful 11 times, right? Because this is one of those reviews that gives some validity to the person reviewing it. It kind of tends to explain a very specific event, right? So here's how the business owner responded, and it's very long, so I'm gonna go ahead and talk through it. And usually, I wouldn't recommend such a long response, but in this case, the owner did it well. So he explains that he felt like the review seemed off to begin with, so they went back and checked all of their security footage and all of their point of sale to actually get a sense of what happened with the customer. And you'll see that he just says it flat out. This is a complete fabrication. The whole thing is a lie. So then he timestamps everything. What time you got here? What time you ordered this? Um, he defends his food and says that that they've had other people eat them for X amount of time, and that nonetheless they removed the entrees from the bill of the customer. So this is really, really it's a really positive response to the review for somebody that was, for example, looking at having a dinner party or something at this restaurant, right? Because maybe you don't care so much about all this stuff, but you're like, what if I don't like the food, here he said, because you were unhappy, we removed the entrees from your bill. So there is that worst case scenario the customer was talking about. Okay, they're not going to charge me for food I don't like they obviously stand by their food. And so then here he actually lists the timestamp. So there's no doubts about who's telling the truth here. This part I think was funny when he says that the appetizer arrives and then he makes sure to write in captions and they were devoured within a couple of minutes. Um, and then he goes ahead and goes above and beyond and says everybody can see the stills from the security footage. Then he gives some more review. He reviews the customer himself, right, and is saying that they weren't the best customers there, and says that they're open to constructive criticism, but in this case, this is a lie, and you shouldn't have done this, right? So I really like how empowered this business owner is feeling, how much they stand by their product and their service, and that they were able to demonstrate that customer service is really important to them, even while they are doing it by basically calling out a customer who told a lie. This is a much less involved response, but it was still, it's still very truthful. Ordered a waffle, had a fingernail and hair. How disgusting! Horrible customer service. Asked for a refund, didn't get one. Wouldn't send my worst enemy. The owner said our restaurant is not open yet, so this is impossible. We open May 12th, just in case this is remotely true. So obviously, this was just a flat out lie because the business isn't even open yet. But just to let you know that it's also okay to be like, to just give a short and honest to you response, to the person, right? It doesn't always have to be so professional and perfect. An honest voice goes a really long way. And so, just to recap some of the points that we've gone over today, is authenticity and consistency are really going to help you when you decide to show up in terms of responding to reviews, positive or negative. Authenticity and consistency is a wonderful strategy all on its own. So, be yourself, and give yourself time in a way that works for you so that you can do it consistently. Get everything off your chest in private. Say whatever you want to say. Don't judge the responses that you have for yourself. Don't judge your own expectations. Say whatever you want to say in private, and then take a few moments to decide, okay, well, what does my business want to say? What do I actually want people who read this review to hear me say? Evaluate the review. Make sure to mine it for all of those goals, right? All of the opportunities to improve, perhaps new ideas for added business or added services, different ways that you can like delight your customer, really wow them. So make sure you take all that in, write it in a notes app or keep a file for it. Invite the customers back, especially when you know that you can do better by them. Just by all means, give them a sincere, I hope you'll give me another chance. Let me know when you're coming in again. I'd like to make sure that, this exceeds your expectation next time. And don't let the trolls stop you from showing up. As you saw from those two reviews, some people will put a lot of energy into just being angry about something and just griping about something. Don't let that hold you back from, shining your light, from sharing your offerings, from offering whatever service or business it is that you do, because it doesn't matter if there's lots of competition. It doesn't matter if there are trolls out there. There is only one you, and you are the only person that's going to do what you do the way that you do it, and it is needed. So do not let people that sometimes get angry and just want to take it out online stop you from doing that or sharing that. This is a process where it's okay to get better over time, and there's no shame in that. And be confident when you're responding to negative reviews.